Greetings, friends. Thank you for visiting my channel. If you're here for the first time, don't forget to subscribe and share this video. Let me know your location in the comments. I value all your feedback. Let's begin. Martin had always held a deep respect for relationships built on honesty and emotional stability. For him, love wasn't about constant affirmations or control. It was about a shared confidence that didn't require constant validation. He had no interest in probing into his partner's affairs without just cause. So when he crossed paths with Sophie, he believed he'd found someone who echoed those values. She was sharp-minded, driven, and carried a bright sense of purpose that drew him in immediately. Their bond grew quickly, grounded in mutual respect and companionship. They created a rhythm of life where responsibilities were shared effortlessly and small victories were celebrated together. For a long while, he felt secure, never suspicious. That sense of certainty shifted one weekend when Sophie unexpectedly introduced a coworker named Elliot. It was during a casual Saturday barbecue hosted by friends they both knew well. Martin had arrived earlier, as he usually did, to lend a hand, arranging the chairs, lighting the grill, laughing with the guys while prepping food. Sophie had texted that she'd be late, tied up with last-minute work duties. Everything had been planned in advance, and Martin was in a good mood, anticipating a fun, laid-back evening surrounded by familiar faces and waiting for Sophie to arrive. When she finally did, she wasn't alone. A few colleagues accompanied her, among them Elliot. As Martin finished setting out drinks, Sophie came up to him, her tone light and affectionate, and said, "This is Elliot, the guy who's been helping me with the new office project." Martin extended a courteous hand, offering a firm shake, but internally, something shifted. He couldn't quite name it, but Elliot exuded a kind of confidence that felt less like charisma and more like provocation, like someone eager to make an impression. The way he looked at Sophie, the playful tone in his voice, the inside jokes they shared in plain view, it all unsettled Martin. He kept his demeanor relaxed, but his eyes followed every interaction. Elliot stuck close to Sophie, inserting her into every anecdote, referencing seemingly trivial conversations they'd shared at work. Occasionally, his tone with her bordered on the intimate rather than professional. Sophie laughed, seemingly oblivious, or perhaps choosing to ignore the optics. Later, when Elliot wandered into the kitchen alone, Martin followed. He didn't go in to confront him. He simply wanted to stand face to face to catch whatever it was that was gnawing at him. Elliot turned with a smug half-smile and casually asked if Martin also worked in events, noting that Sophie mentioned him often around the office. Martin replied with a neutral expression, met his gaze, and then quietly exited. But in that brief exchange, something locked into place for him. From that day forward, Martin began to notice subtle changes, not because he was looking to find fault, but because something within him had shifted. Sophie's tone, her behavior, the frequency with which Elliot's name came up, it all felt different. Over meals, she'd bring up his ideas, his creativity, how he'd salvaged some project in the 11th hour. Finally, one evening, Martin asked directly, "Are you absolutely certain he's just a colleague?" Sophie laughed, brushing off the question as absurd. But it wasn't her words that lingered, it was the laugh itself. That deflection, the refusal to address the concern head-on, left a bitter taste. When humor replaces honesty, it's rarely a good sign. Martin tried to maintain their routine, his job, household chores, weekend plans, but something essential between them had shifted. Every laugh she shared over the phone, every just work message, every late-night meeting began to weigh more heavily. What once felt natural now felt like a delicate balance he had to maintain. He refrained from questioning her, careful not to appear jealous or controlling, traits he'd always avoided. But deep down, he was slowly unraveling. The final straw came one quiet morning over breakfast. Sophie casually mentioned an upcoming company retreat to a lakeside resort. She had already confirmed her attendance. Without breaking eye contact, Martin calmly asked who would be joining her. She listed a few names and, almost as an afterthought, added, "Oh, and Elliot will be there too." That was it. Martin took a slow breath and said, without raising his voice or letting any sarcasm creep in, "If you go, don't come back." Sophie froze, staring at him, trying to determine if he was serious. She asked if he was overreacting, if he was being unreasonable. He gave no further response. In that still moment, everything became clear. It no longer mattered whether he ever received an admission or uncovered tangible proof. The trust that had once anchored their relationship had been irreparably broken, and all that remained between them was a hollow silence. When a relationship disintegrates so completely, no justification is strong enough to resurrect what's already been reduced to rubble. Struggling to maintain her composure, Sophie locked eyes with Martin, her voice low but firm. She had never strayed, never given him any cause for doubt. "I've been right here the entire time, Martin. Honest, transparent. I've never kept anything from you, never broken your trust," she said. Then, her voice faltering with hurt and disbelief, she asked, "So why do you look at me like I'm a stranger?" Martin's reply came without emotion. "If you walk out that door now, don't bother coming back." She looked away, murmuring something barely audible. Perhaps, "That's on you," then rose from her seat. Martin didn't move. He sat still, staring at the untouched meal between them as a deep emptiness crept into his chest. Earlier that same day, Martin had begun to understand how a single, unrecognizable moment can unravel years of illusion. Sophie had left. She packed light, just enough for a quick trip, a few clothes, her sandals, and the sunscreen she always saved for travel. She dabbed on perfume, adjusted her hair in the hallway mirror, and exited the house as if she were just stepping out for the weekend. No hesitation, no backward glance. To her, Martin's previous warning may have seemed like an insecure outburst, something that would pass, like so many arguments before, as if he'd still be waiting when she returned, ready to act as though nothing had shifted. But this time, something had. He didn't protest, he didn't call out, he just watched, each step she took echoing like a final sentence at the end of a long, unfinished story. As she disappeared beyond the gate, Martin sat down on the couch, arms crossed tightly over his chest, drawing a deep breath like a man bracing for impact. He remained that way for hours, no television, no background music, just silence and the weight of his thoughts. It wasn't anger that consumed him. It was a piercing clarity. He didn't waste energy wondering where she'd gone or who she might be with. Instead, his thoughts turned inward. He started thinking about all the moments he had stayed silent for the sake of peace that had long since evaporated. That very afternoon, he stood up, walked to the bedroom, and began gathering what she had left behind. Her bags, old paperwork, photo albums from brighter days, her work uniforms, her favorite shoes, dog-eared novels beside the bed, and jewelry tucked into drawers. He packed everything carefully, each item placed with deliberate precision, as though he were not just cleaning a room, but closing a chapter. There was no rush, no panic, only the calm certainty of someone ready to let go. He called her parents, informing them her belongings would arrive the next day. He asked only that they be there to receive the delivery. Then he locked the door, changed the entry code on the keypad, and deactivated her access to their shared bank account. He updated the home security system, deleted shared photos from his phone, and changed the passwords to the accounts they once used together. With every small action, he reclaimed a bit more of himself. It hurt, but with the pain came a lightness he hadn't felt in ages. That night, he slept without guilt. No gnawing suspicions, no need to pretend everything was okay. Just sleep, deep, undisturbed, and honest. 3 days later, just past midday, the doorbell rang. He didn't check. He already knew it was her. Martin stayed still as the knocking persisted. Sophie rang the bell again and again for nearly 10 minutes. She called, sent texts, left voicemails. He ignored everyone. Outside, she noticed a delivery receipt pinned to the mailbox. It showed her things had been dropped off and signed for by her parents. That's when it finally hit her. He hadn't been bluffing. She tried to peer into the house through the edge of a curtain, but it was as still as a photograph. Even the neighborhood dogs, usually quick to bark, remained quiet, as though respecting the silence Martin had chosen. She sat on the front steps for almost an hour. Her messages turned softer, more pleading. "Martin, please, can we talk? You're blowing this out of proportion. I was on a work trip." But her words no longer carried weight. Whatever meaning they once had evaporated. Against the backdrop of his silence, her excuses rang hollow. Martin didn't respond. Though the door was physically locked, what she truly couldn't reach anymore was his heart. Eventually, she stood and left, not with dignity, not with closure, but with the sour understanding that the narrative had shifted and she no longer held the pen. Inside, Martin rose from the couch and walked toward the entrance. He looked through the peephole, watching the gate swing shut behind her. Resting his forehead against the cool wood, he stayed there, unmoving. The quiet that filled the house reflected exactly what he felt. A definitive ending. A hollow pause. And, unexpectedly, a sense of peace. He stepped into the kitchen, poured himself a glass of water, then returned to the bedroom. Opening the closet, he saw the empty hangers, the cleared shelves. For the first time, those absences didn't feel like loss. In fact, the emptiness felt fitting, like space reclaimed, like freedom. The ache hadn't vanished. It lingered, unmistakable. But it had shifted into something clearer, something easier to carry. The sharpness had dulled, worn down by months of quiet endurance. That same afternoon, Martin's phone rang. It was Sophie's mother. Her voice was cautious, hushed. She asked if things were truly finished, wondered if he might be open to a conversation, and gently suggested he reconsider. Martin responded with genuine appreciation. He assured her there had been no yelling, no explosive ending. Just a line that had been crossed, one he couldn't ignore anymore. She tried to appeal to him, her tone gentle yet persistent. But Martin stopped her with kindness and finality. He reminded her that he had always shown Sophie the respect she deserved, but now he needed to offer that same respect to himself. Then he ended the call. In the following days, Sophie didn't let go. She rang at unpredictable hours, turned up at his office unannounced, sent messages through mutual friends. Martin stood firm. He refused to return to old patterns. His decision hadn't been made on impulse. He had given Sophie room to hear, to reflect, to turn around, but she had chosen her direction. And now, so had he, with certainty, without spectacle or prolonged discussion. He was done waiting for honesty. Elsewhere, Sophie had retreated to the sanctuary of her childhood bedroom. It had become her quiet place of escape. Most days, she stayed curled up, clutching her phone, endlessly refreshing it for a message that never appeared. The house was unchanged, still filled with lavender, brewed coffee, and silence, but its comfort only deepened the sense of loss. At first, she said little. She dodged concern with vague responses and steered every conversation far from Martin's name. Then one morning, while she absent-mindedly spread butter on toast gone cold and stirred her coffee without drinking, her mother took a seat across the table. She looked her daughter in the eyes, her voice soft but unwavering. "Tell me what really happened," she asked. "What came between you and Martin?" Sophie exhaled deeply, letting the butter knife fall onto her plate. She stared at the floor for a long moment, deciding how much to say. "He changed, Mom. Something in him shifted. He started questioning everything. And then, before I left for that work trip with my colleagues, he told me that if I went, I shouldn't come back. I figured he was just upset, that he'd cool off. So I went. But when I got back, my things were already here. He'd locked me out, blocked me everywhere. No message, Nothing. It was like I didn't exist anymore. Her mother sat in stunned silence, struggling to process the words. Slowly, she shook her head, disbelief and hurt written across her face. I always thought Martin was a good man. I liked him. I really did. But to treat you like that? That's not frustration. That's cruelty. People argue, sure, but this is something else entirely. He went too far. She couldn't shake it. Hours later, propelled by instinct and the need for answers, she grabbed her purse and drove straight to Martin's home. When she rang the bell, he took a moment before opening the gate. He recognized her and gave a slight nod, showing no surprise. He gestured for her to come in and directed her toward the couch. He remained standing nearby. She sat, composed and deliberate, as if she had rehearsed every word. Martin, I've always held you in high regard. From the beginning, I believed you cared about my daughter. Still believe it, honestly. But what you did, sending her away like she meant nothing, I don't understand. Maybe you were hurt she went on that trip, but people travel. That's life. You should have at least listened. Martin stood still, arms folded, eyes steady. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he walked across the room, opened a drawer, and retrieved a plain brown envelope. He handed it to her calmly, with the ease of someone offering something ordinary. She looked at it, confused. "What is this?" she asked. He replied with just 2 words. "The truth." Her hands trembled slightly as she opened the envelope and pulled out 3 matte photographs. In the first, Sophie was holding hands with a man, Elliot, as they walked together across a grassy field, well away from the inn where she'd been staying. The second photo showed them on a bench, bodies close, their posture unmistakably intimate. In the third, they stood beneath a tree, kissing, unhurried and certain. She stared at the images, speechless. Her expression shifted slowly, not to anger, but to sorrow, to disappointment. After a long pause, she slid the photos back into the envelope with care, as if handling a fragile truth. Then she looked at Martin again, her voice quieter now, laced with regret and understanding. "You'll always be welcome in our home," she said gently. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have come without knowing everything." Martin didn't speak. He gave her a small, quiet nod. "Would it be all right if I kept these?" she asked, lifting the envelope slightly. He met her gaze, and with one final nod, gave his silent consent. She didn't say a word, just stood, pressing the envelope tightly against her chest, and walked out with a silence that said everything. He remained in the living room, motionless, composed. There was nothing left to clarify, no further words required. Just days earlier, on the very morning Sophie left for her company's retreat, Martin waited. He lingered until the gate clicked shut behind her and watched her car disappear down the road. Only then did he step back inside. He picked up his phone, opened his browser, and searched Private Investigator Plus, IN's city name. From the list that appeared, he chose a well-reviewed agency located close to where Sophie's retreat would take place. He didn't second-guess himself. He placed the call immediately. The person who answered had a calm, measured voice, professional. Martin shared only the essential details. His wife was leaving for a supposed team-building event. He had doubts about one of her colleagues, and he knew precisely where she'd be. The address of the inn, the vehicle she'd take, even the time she was expected to arrive. He forwarded photographs of both Sophie and Elliot, noted the backpack she would be carrying, and stressed the need for complete confidentiality. The investigator confirmed receipt of everything and assured him that surveillance would begin that afternoon. After ending the call, Martin carried on with his day as though nothing unusual had occurred. By Sunday evening, before Sophie even pulled into the driveway, the results had arrived. An email sat in his inbox, containing 3 photographs, evidence he had dreaded yet expected. His suspicions had been grimly accurate. When Sophie returned home later that day, she was drained, both physically and mentally, still shaken from the trip. She looked forward to a peaceful evening, maybe a home-cooked meal, and the usual comfort of her mother's presence. But the moment she entered the house, she sensed a shift. Her father sat upright on the couch, hands clenched together, gaze fixed on the floor. Her mother was beside him, stiff, eyes locked on Sophie as she stepped inside. The atmosphere was suffocating. Before Sophie could utter a word, her mother's voice cut through the silence, more resolute than Sophie remembered hearing in years. "Sit down. We need to talk." With a pounding heart, Sophie sat. Then she saw it, the envelope on the table. Her mother slowly reached for it, almost as if unwrapping something too painful to accept. Without a word, she drew out the photos, 3 of them, the same ones Martin had sent. Sophie's eyes fell on the first image, her hand intertwined with Elliot's. The next showed them sitting together, far too close for any misreading. The last captured a kiss, clear, damning, indisputable. She barely had time to process before her father's voice, low and deliberate, broke the silence. "Is this what you've been keeping from us? This is how you repay the man who gave you everything?" Her hands began to shake. Her mouth opened, but no sound came. I wasn't thinking. It was a mistake. A moment. Just a moment." Her words came apart in pieces, fragile and unconvincing. Her mother stood, her shoulders tense, each breath labored. Her eyes shimmered, not with grief, but something harsher, disgrace. "You lied to me, Sophie. I went to him. I confronted him, defended you, like only a mother would. I left that house feeling broken. Not because he shouted, he never even raised his voice, but because he showed me these. And suddenly, it all made sense. My God, what have you done?" Sophie collapsed into sobs. She tried to explain, said it was impulsive, that she thought Martin didn't love her anymore, that Elliot meant nothing, that everything spiraled too fast, too carelessly. But her words couldn't undo what the images revealed. Her father got up and walked away without a word, unable to bear staying. Her mother remained standing, arms crossed, her voice no longer stern but trembling. "You shattered his trust, and ours. Now all that's left for you is the silence of those who once believed in you." She turned and exited, leaving Sophie behind, alone, staring at the photographs on the table. They lay there like broken pieces of a life that had come undone. The divorce happened without incident, no shouting, no angry exchanges, just a quiet acceptance between two people who had drifted too far apart. Sophie briefly pursued something with Elliot, the man at the heart of it all. But he made his intentions plain. He wasn't looking for commitment, only something momentary. The sting of that dismissal hit harder than she anticipated. Disheartened and disconnected from her job, Sophie eventually quit. With the financial portion from the separation, she thanked her parents and made a choice: to start over. She relocated to a quieter town, far from familiar faces. There, among strangers, life slowly felt more honest, less romanticized, more grounded in what was real. Martin, on the other hand, moved forward at his own pace. He didn't rush into anything. There was no bitterness, no regret. Over time, Sophie faded from memory, becoming just another chapter closed. He found himself smiling more, savoring simple joys, a meal shared with friends, a book read alone at a cafe, aimless walks that asked for nothing in return. What once seemed out of reach, peace, clarity, gradually became part of his routine. And in that gentle quiet, life reminded him of something he'd nearly forgotten: that healing isn't just possible, it's inevitable. This story has come to an end. What's your opinion? Share it in the comments, my friend. And if you like this story, check out other exciting videos on my channel. I'll say goodbye until the next video. See you.